So I have this picture of a spoonbill. I'm just going to draw and paint this middle one. So when I look at this spoonbill, I have, for me, this is just my technique. I'm not a great drawer by any shape of the imagination. But when I look at this picture, I'm going to point out the basic shapes that I see. And I see a triangle here. I see a triangle there. A triangle with a little bit of a curve, like a piece of pizza pie there. A rectangle or almost a square. And another pizza pie with a little bit of an angle. Here is the body, and the neck is a little bit of a snake with a little round head, and the bill. Then the legs are just, one of them's almost like a little question mark. And so that's where we'll start, is not transferring, but we're going to attempt to draw, and I will use a pencil, these shapes next to each other and see if we'll turn into a bird. So, and I'm only going to do the birds, and what makes a picture a little bit more interesting is if that bird is offset and not exactly in the middle. So that'll give our picture just a little bit more interest. So I'm going to offset it off to the left. We're going to do my first triangle. And for me, this square is an easier shape. And so about halfway down the triangle and halfway up this rectangle sort of shape. So halfway here. And this is, let me go up here. There's my V. I'm going to make another V. And that comes down. There's one wing. There's the other wing. That's going to have a little squirrely. We're going to put there. I've got a neck. That's coming out here with a head on it and a bill. Then the legs come off the body and down like that. So there is the start of my spoonbill. Let's look at the background a little bit. We have some sawgrass here. We have some bigger trees there. The skyline is about here with some bushes there. Another tree line. This is water right there. And there's bushes there. There's water. Because he's standing in the water. And he's standing in the water, so there's some water right there. All right, so there's the start of our picture. So my supplies, I'm just going to because this is a small picture, I'm just going to use this little round brush. I am using a little flat brush and another flat brush. I typically, on these little pictures, I paint with a wet brush on dry paper. Let's see what happens. I'm going to do the sky first, and I'm going to get my brush real wet, come up here, get my stage set. This is sky, And I've got to distinguish the color of my sky with the color of my water. And I'm going to do the water next, and it's going to be a little bit more tealish. There's some teal. I'll pick that up. Put a little green, smash that around. And I know he's walking in some water. And I'm going to get my brush real wet here and pick up the little bit of paint that's right there. Now this is just a practice piece. This is just me having some fun. And hopefully you have some fun too. Watercolor typically is not real forgiving. It just is not real forgiving at all. But you know what? It's fine. Just have some fun. So I got my water and my sky laid out. Now I'm going to lay out some of the the greenery. The trees in the back in this picture are a little bit darker than the trees, and I'm just laying color, than the sawgrass in the front. So I want to have a little bit of distinction between those colors. And I may have already made a mistake because I used a darker or a lighter. So I'm going to put the darker on top of this lighter. I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, a perfectly skilled artist. But I promise you, putting paint on paper, there's just something joyful in that. I'm going to come over here and activate this water. I'm just still working in my greens. And I'm going to, this particular water, I'm going to use back and forth strokes this way. It just adds a little bit more interest. Instead of, trees sometimes tend to be more rounded. The sawgrass is a little bit more. Is more. And we got a little bit of yellowish sawgrass way back. Oh no, that's water. That's more water, Jay. Ooh, you almost messed that up. That is more water right here. That's some of the, I'm going to use a little bit of this yellow because there's some yellow highlights back in here, and then we'll mix some. Get a little red or pink on my spoonbill because that's when some fun happens, right? First, I need to get in between these legs here with some green. There we go. I'll just put that in there, get that around there. And in watercolor, sometimes the white adds a little bit of interest. So never be afraid. Never be afraid of white. So how we get depth and on this bird is layering when you have watercolors. So parts of him is going to be a little on the lighter side, and then you'll just bleed down this watercolor where the color's a little light. I got a clean wet brush. I'm pulling those colors down just a little bitty bit. Now you can see the pencil marks in here, and that's fine. I'm just going to leave the pencil marks. This isn't more of a just a practice sheet. I haven't painted for a while, a little too long, I promise. His little head is in the browns. I don't want to get it too brown to start with, so I am going to just put a little brown on here. Once you get your colors laid in where you want them, then you start layering the darks on tops to bring out a little more interest in the piece. So in the back, I'm going to put a little line so we can tell that there's just a little bit of more interest. Put a little line, and it's kind of wet paint, so I'm just letting it flow how it flows. Bringing it up a little bit. Down at the water base, it's a little different. We're going to put it up here a little more. A couple more places that's just a little bit darker, just for a little more interest. I got a little too much on there, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. The beautiful thing about watercolor, I dried off my brush, is you can just play with it and maneuver it wherever you want it to go. I want a little bit brighter yellow up here instead of that golden, so I'm just going to pick up a little of that and put just a little bit of a brighter yellow, because different seasons in the Everglades brings out different colors. So on here, I'm gonna bring out a few of this. And I'm gonna just create some grass looking. And it's gonna just go in all sorts of directions in various little places over here. Put a few here, maybe a few over here. Sometimes for highlights instead of white, because white's really difficult in watercolors. But you can use yellows. They're really good for that. I want a little bit darker grass that's green. And I'm just doing little bitty light grassy, little light grasses at the water's edge. The water doesn't typically just, stop at the edge in the swamp. There's a lot of grass. I have two topics that I like to talk about. All right. We need to make the water look just a little bit more interesting, in my opinion. So I'm going to clean out my brush. When you're painting water, water seems to flow, sometimes left to right, right to left. So to add the more interest is taking your brush and stroking left to right, putting some dark spots, some lighter spots. Like the grass go up and down, the water goes side to side, and that just adds a little bit more interest You can see where it's darker here, a little darker under here, and there's some lines coming down here. So we're going to try that. We're going to darken this top part up. We're going to darken this up a little. This one stays kind of light because it's how the light is shining on that. We're going to put the belly a little darker. I'm drying my brush off a little bit. Going to blend that in just a wee bit more. Put a little color on his neck. His neck is mostly white, so I'm not going to be putting much paint on there. And his tail has a pretty dark spot right in the middle. And I'm going to just lengthen that tail out just a little bit. And we're going to put some wing lines so that it looks like a wing instead of a box. Wings aren't real boxy. But this was a practice. This is our let's learn how to paint a wing. Let's learn just how to paint a bird. All right, I'm going to darken up his head. And my brush is a little wet, my paint's a little wet, and I don't want it to bleed. You might just leave him brown. But I do know that we need a ring of water right around his, right where they go in. Because that's, we make, like if you're walking in the water, you're going to have a ring. And a little eye. This is not the perfect painting, but this is a good place to start. This is a perfect place to start if you're just wanting to pick up some paint and you're like, I don't know how to draw. Step one is just identify the shapes in the picture that you're wanting to paint. Draw it out and just start painting. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoy. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see more of. Thank you.